Dear all, welcome back to CAMILLE Diaries Symposium, which takes place on behalf of the exhibition The CAMILLE Diaries, Current Artistic Positions on M/Otherhood, Life and Care, curated by Regina Rapp and Christian Delutz at Art Laboratory Berlin. After the introduction and talk with Astrid Niemes, we are now in panel A, M Others, Wombs and Placentas. I'm Tuçe Erel, and I'm quite happy to moderate this session as one of the Art Laboratory Berlin team members. In this panel discussion, we had 3 artists from the exhibition and 1 scientist collaborator to present their work and collaboration. Let me briefly share the structure before I introduce the speakers of M Others, Wombs and Placentas. In the first of the panel, each speaker will give a 10-minute long presentation about their work presented in the CAMILLE Diaries. In the second part, we will have a discussion, and we will also address the questions that my colleague Natasha collects from the audience via social media and YouTube live stream chat. Please do not hesitate to post your questions, which will be discussed in the last part of the panel. And I would like to introduce our first speaker of the panel, Cecilia Johnson, whose work HAEM is on view in the exhibition. Cecilia Johnson is an artist whose work combines artistic observation of phenomena and the search of poetry in the factual through a lens of scientific and cultural knowledge. Jonsson holds an MA in Fine Arts from the Bergen Academy and Art and Design and the Nordic Sound Art Program. Her artistic work has been shown internationally in numerous solo and group exhibitions and has received awards such as VIDA 16 Art and Artificial Life International Awards, Bio Art and Design Awards, Briggs Art Electronica, Hybrid Art, and Cole Art and Environmental Prize. Cecilia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let's see if it works. Yeah, so hi, my name is Cecilia Johnson. I'm an artist based in Amsterdam, and also thank you for the introduction. So I have a very strong interest to how information translates, but also how information takes new form in different disciplinary traditions. And my works are shaped by strategies in which materiality, site-specific navigation, and objective research methods often intertwine with the personal subjective experience of our contemporary alchemy. And today I've been asked to focus my work that's on show at the CAMILLE Diaries exhibition. And I will talk a bit about the practical execution of the work, ideas, and how the project team developed. And also together with my collaborator, Rodrigo, Leite de Oliveira, who will also give a talk after me. And it was one of the winning projects of the Bio Art and Design Awards in 2016. Yeah, and for those of you who haven't seen the work, I thought I will start with showing a small video as an introduction. HAEM symbolizes life's direction from the very conception. And it's a project that's part of a larger series of work that I developed through the years, researching environmental issues related to mining of ferrous materials, but also many different iron-loving species and how they are transformed by and transform mineral cycles as sculpting forces. And iron, it's an eminent metal that has come to symbolize power, masculinity, strength, and a torrent of other ideas. Iron is also a mortal metal that through its nature and abundance has emerged as essential to life, but it can at the same time be very toxic in high amounts. It's reactive, and it's a vulnerable metal that can be defeated by air itself. I will not go too deep, but I thought I introduced this work called the Iron Ring from 2013. And it's a work that's attentive to the concept of value, and that the value of precious metals are linked to the cost of its extraction. And for this project, I implemented green mining techniques where I made use of specific plant species that have natural qualities to clean polluted soil. And from this grass, I managed to harvest iron ore in a 5,000-year-old mine in Spain. And overcoming such difficulties of turning organic matter into a cast object of metallic iron, it also directed to me an inly search, not only to the iron that runs through my own veins, but also addressing an intimate process of personal orientation, and also to push us to rethink our concept of nature and the thinking of interconnectedness. And the opportunity that I had to be part of the BioArt and Design Award was that I could develop my initial proposal further together with Rodrigo, who is a medical scientist at the Netherlands Cancer Institute. And it also inspired me to explore my knowledge in biomining and metallurgy in a completely unexpected direction. And we were discussing iron both as a life supportive carrier, as a tool, but also a carrier of identity and guidance, and that it's something that we gain from our parents, but also in the education. And in our search for a discarded human blood source that in a way had lost its meaning and were not restricted to medical termination laws, Rodrigo told me about the placenta, an interface for contact and exchanges of nutrients and oxygen. And it all happens in the complex labyrinth of blood vessels that you see when observed under a microscope reassembles as a labyrinth. And it's in this labyrinth where the mother and child intimately first meet and establish their first connection. And drawing parallels to the labyrinth of choices we all have to make in life that has individual and collective consequences, our scope was to propose to extract iron from the blood of discarded human placentas and to create a guidance tool in the form of a magnetized compass needle. And this would then be presented in a custom-made glass bowl that was based on the microscopic imagery of the placenta cross-section. So after delivery, most mammals, they eat their afterbirth, and most people don't. And some women, they opt to cook the nutritious organ, but most placentas are still discarded as medical waste after birth. In many other cultures, they honor the placenta or bury it so that the child will remain connected to the land and its community. And the placenta, I think Rodrigo will talk a bit more about this in his talk, but it's a very, very fascinating organ. But it's also an organ that's unique in the sense that the pregnant mother has the right to determine what actually happens with it after she has given birth. And for the project, we composed an ethical consent form where we described the artistic concept, anonymity of the donation, and also the terminating burning process of the organs and its DNA and the metallurgical process. And by contacting pregnant mothers via flyers, social media, our website, and through collaboration that we had with the gynecologists and the midwives at OLVG West in Amsterdam, we were able to introduce a new possibility to the pregnant woman to be able to donate their placenta to ART after she had given birth. And for HAEM, we finally received 69 donations from 71 babies. And the placentas, they were collected by us, and then we recorded them by weight and date of birth before they were sliced into smaller parts and dried in a dehydration machine in preparation for the final iron reduction. And the firing was done in a collaboration with traditionally trained blacksmith Thijs van de Manakker, where the dried weight of 6.8 kilos of placenta, or the biological bio-ore, was layered into a custom-made loam furnace with an equal amount of charcoal, which we layered in the furnace and fired for 10 hours. And this firing was very exceptional and a lot different than the smoke that I previously did with the grass from Spain. It had very high flames, strong sweet smell, and dense oily smoke. And this firing also generated a very clean iron bloom that could be refined by hammering out the slag products, and the smith could then forge it into a thin metal needle that then was magnetized to align north after the gravity field of Earth. And HAEM is presented as an installation with the compass floating in the midst of the rotating glass bowl that was inspired by the placenta labyrinth region. And accompanying the work is a sound composition and a wall-mounted archive accounting the 69 donated placentas, date and birth, and HD video. And for the curious, there's also a 30 minutes film that we made in 2018 that documents the project more in depth. And that was it for me. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Cecilia, many thanks for this great presentation about your work, HAEM. We will continue with Cecilia Johnson's scientist collaborator, Dr. Rodrigo Leite de Oliveira, who is a scientist with a PhD in biomedicine. He has published several scientific papers on the topic of tumor angiogenesis, meaning the growth of blood vessels in tumors, and currently researches novel anti-cancer therapies based on drug repurposing at the Netherlands Cancer Institute in Amsterdam. Although his expertise is in scientific realm, his personal interests go well beyond scientific boundaries to also explore the connections between science, art, culture, and human interaction. Dear Rodrigo, we're looking forward to hearing the details of your collaboration with Cecilia Johnson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for the invitation to be part of this beautiful initiative. Okay, so I will try to give a more scientific angle on the project. Although it was a very close collaboration with Cecilia, as she mentioned, and just now listening to her presentation, I could revive all the process, and it was a a very nice moment. So as a scientist, and I think we share this within many science, amongst various scientists, we all want to contribute to a cause and to impact society somehow, to improve quality of living of people. And we often deal with the projects, trying to answer questions that are a little bit more feasible to address. And sometimes we have to bound to this rigidity of the scientific methods, and we build knowledge upon knowledge that is already pre-existing. And when I shortly after I moved to the Netherlands, one of the interesting things that I found was this BioArt and Design Awards that was aiming at putting together a scientist and an artist and inviting them to create a project that would push the boundaries of both disciplines. And I found this extremely interesting because it could, in a way, allow to ask almost impossible questions and try to use science to address them, but things that sometimes we as scientists don't even dare to ask because of this, I call it rigidity, but it's the bound to the scientific method. And so when I heard these projects like the bulletproof skin that Yalila Essaidi wanted to make, inspired by the skin of superheroes, and she really managed to do it just by combining the silk that a spider laid, a spider that produces a very resistant net, and just applying them on the back of skin that is grown in the laboratory. They were able to make this skin much more resistant. And this process is actually being researched further for medical purposes in dealing with burned wounds. As well as this other project called The Art of Deception that was made by Isaac Montet and Toby Kears, in which they made 21 hearts derived from pigs and questioned, researched, and in this very provocative project, deal with the problem of organ transplantation that at the moment is limiting medical practice. So 1 year later, I joined the project as a scientist, and I was paired with Cecilia, and we were very happy to be awarded with the possibility to develop our idea that Cecilia explained already before. So Cecilia wanted to make an object, an iron object, and she wanted the provenience of that iron to come from human sources. And it was a very fascinating question. I've been doing research in vascular biology, so a process that is called angiogenesis, or the growth of blood vessels that grow everywhere in our body, also in tumors, and are essential to transport nutrients, oxygen, and the waste products. And of course, the iron that we have in our body cannot be free, otherwise it's not soluble. And it comes in our body in this molecule that is called the HAEM group, that it's inside the red blood cells, that are the cells that transport oxygen to all the parts of the body. And when Cecilia wanted to transform this molecular iron into metallic iron, I thought this is a crazy idea, and I was wondering if this would ever gonna work. And in our discussions, we also realized that this iron that is in our blood transports oxygen everywhere. But when the metal is in its solid form, so in the metallic iron, it is actually very vulnerable to oxygen. And so this duality between the function of iron while in our body, but when it's turned into metal, becomes actually vulnerable to the material that it's transporting for life, became immediately a fascinating point to research further. And you might wonder why a cancer scientist comes up with this placenta idea. So here I bring an image that parallels a placenta or the development of an embryo and the development of a tumor that is actually not far away from each other. So they both have very common molecules that are shown here in the middle. They have actually a more or less similar structure, and there are several components that are necessary for both to develop. In fact, it has been described in the past that the tumor, it's like an embryo's evil twin, because of its negative impact, but it's also very similar in terms of development, structures, and in molecules. And the placenta itself is a very intriguing organ because it is essential for life, but is a transient organ. And there are not many organs like this in our body. So it is only developed in a particular state in life. And that is essential to generate a new life. And once this function is done, the placenta is often discarded, so it's not necessary anymore for the continuation of this life. And that was also intriguing from us to try to repurpose this organ and to give it like a different meaning or the continuation of this meaning given its important function. So here you see a photo of a cross-section of a placenta under the microscope where it shows its complexity in structure. So it's lots of blood vessels and they all form this network that resembles a labyrinth, which we also found very interesting and poetic in a way, because Mother Nature decided that the meeting point of mother and fetus would be in a labyrinth. And so this would further enhance our narrative and the importance of personal orientation and education, mentoring, and all the related aspects of this interaction. One thing that we also found interesting, and this I found during the process of researching for the project, is that the placenta is actually built by the paternal genes. It's a process called genetic imprinting, in which the genes from the father epigenetically silence the genes of the mother. And so the organ grows because of this father interaction. And while we always or tend to think about mother and child, actually the space where this meeting happens, it's actually fostered by the father. And so this collaboration with Cecilia, but not only because the project could only be made possible with the help and collaboration with many other people, made my perception of art and these interactions a little bit different. So that is crucial for the advance of knowledge, for the expansion of awareness of everything that surrounds us, and this concept of interconnectedness being so present, or I became aware that this is present in our everyday life. And so for me, not only to be part of this project was interesting from the project itself, but had also a personal impact in the way that I believe that art, science, but also other disciplines are just lenses that we can use to see and understand the world. To end, I would like to just acknowledge a group of people that made this project possible. Of course, Cecilia, that was a great pleasure and inspiration to work with. All the mothers, fathers, and their babies who donate the placentas for the project. Etelka, a gynecologist with whom we collaborate in the hospital to collect the placentas. Thijs, the blacksmith. Mark, who helped us with the glass ball. Marcelo was a composer of the sound piece of the installation. Clara Ensinha in the image and video. The BioArt and Design Award, and the Netherlands Cancer Institute for institutional support. And of course, all of you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Rodrigo Leite de Oliveira, for informing about your collaboration with Cecilia Johnson and interesting details about placenta in the CAMILLE Diaries Symposium. We are moving on with our third panel speaker, Margherita Pevere, whose work Wombs is part of the CAMILLE Diaries exhibition. Margherita Pevere distinguishes herself on the contemporary bioart scene for her unique visceral signature. Her arresting performances and installations intertwine poetics and controversy, critique, and desire. Bacteria, animals, and plants are her allies in the exploration of ecological complexity, which she pursues with sophisticated bodily aesthetics. She's a PhD candidate and artistic researcher at Aalto University, Helsinki. She's a member of the Finnish BioArt Society and recently founded the artist group Fronte Facuo with Marco Donnarumma and Andrea Camillare. Recent accolades include the Digital Art Award of Romeo Europe Festival with Donnarumma, the honorable mention at the Share Prize, and the European Media Art Platform Grant. Margherita, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello everyone, and thanks for being here. It's a great pleasure for me, and thank you Regina, Chris, Tuçe, and all our laboratory crew for making this possible in such uncertain times. So time is not much, so we'll move to my presentation, but just a technical note, if I look this way, it's because I have my screen, my slides on a secondary monitor. My presentation draws from the piece exhibited at our laboratory Berlin, and then present core ideas of my broader research. I won't give much detail for technical details about the piece, but I'm open for questions during the Q&A. So the series Wombs meditates, now it started, okay, thanks. The series Wombs meditates on sexuality and hormonal contraception from an environmental and more than human perspective. So the project propagates through interconnected intervention of biological art, performance, and photography. The non-living installation W01 features organ-like scientific glassware that hosts bacterial colonies in a culture medium that is infused with hormones and hormone metabolites extracted from my urine. In W02 and W03, terrestrial slugs are hermaphroditic allies in this investigation. In the non-living piece W02, which you now see in the picture, a custom-made extra bodily organ hosts two cell cultures and a hybrid ecosystem, my vaginal epithelial cells and slug egg cells. In W03, there's a series of pictures from a performance for camera with a slug named Branco, so a silent interplate of mucous skin texture, bones, and cavities. The CAMILLE Diaries, we exhibited the chapters W01 and W03, as you see in the setup that you can see in the picture. So the piece and the series stem from a very simple gesture, taking the pill, which is one of many contraceptive methods that accompany sexuality and thus mediates desires and fears surrounding it. Depending on the chemical composition, the pill activates control feedbacks in the endocrine system and modulate glands and organs. In my case, progestin has the effect of thickening the cervical mucus, thus hindering the sperm from entering the womb and by stopping ovulation. It must be said that gender studies, social history, history of science traverse the pill, and having access to contraception sits on decades of women's battle for self-determination and speaks of one's situatedness. It exceeds the scope of an artwork to address all these discourses, but it remains important to acknowledge them. But if we look at the history of hormones, we find that rodents are used in research, rodents are used in the production of hormones. And the first pregnancy test featured Xenopus laevis frog as the piece, the frog pregnancy test by Eben Kirksey reminds us. Furthermore, water organisms are exposed to mammalian steroid hormones and other endocrine disruptors that mimic hormones and thus modulate involuntarily the organs. Previous research suggests that hermaphroditic gastropods. So I was sharing my research on hermaphroditic gastropods previous research suggests that different hormones may trigger either the female or the male part of sexual organs, but recent publications state that science is undecided on the topic. So there is a gray area, and because of this unknown, because of hermaphroditism, and because of the sadly abject reputation of slugs, they became part of this project. Now let's move to concept. Wombs, the plural form of the title refers to multiple possibilities of embodiment and manifestation. It operates a similar move at the slash in motherhood, as Regine explained earlier. It creates a space of possibility and relationality. It does not refer to the actual organ, but opens from it two relationships that wombs may possibly enact. As Astrida Neymanis writes in Bodies of Water, human reprosexual wombs are one, but among other expressions of a more general aqueous facilitative capacity. Through the threads of gender and ecology, the piece weaves materiality, embodiment, non-living, and vulnerability together. With regard to materiality, it must be said that the engagement happens within the space of possibility that is open by the plural form. Hormones, enacted self-experimentation, and possible bonds. This leads me to remind us not to confuse approach with materiality that characterizes most works in the show with biological determinism, but maybe this is an unnecessary specification. With regard to embodiment, I would like to show you the blackboard I had during my EMA residency at Ur Institute and Container while developing this last chapter of the series. On the top right, you see scientific illustration from the past representing womb, fetus, spermatozoon. In her book, Leaky Bodies, philosopher Margaret Shildrick chooses this picture to accompany her deconstruction of the biopolitical control of female bodies in reproductive technology. According to today's knowledge, these images are wrong. What we understand as bodies discursive. And this illustration illustrates science from the past, but also the underpinning power relationship and knowledge production. So the fabric that Karen Barat describes as the natural cultural continuum. And this is another plane that intersects today's topics and outlines the realm the womb operates in. Philosopher Margherita Radomska develops the concept of the non-living and uncontainable life to discuss the becoming of biotechnological supported artworks. The non-living refers to the enmeshment of the processes for living and dying, a space of ambiguity that refuses to be classified as the one or the other, and therefore exceeds what is normatively understood as life. The concept includes also entities such as viruses, protocells, which became painfully relevant in recent months. And this leads to look at vulnerability, as described by Margaret Shildrick, who reappropriates vulnerability and the monster by deconstructing boundaries of embodiment and assigned otherness. So it's vulnerability is an existential state that is mostly considered as negative, but it is meant to be, it is intended this way because the monstrosity is attributed to the other. So what is at issue is the permeability of boundaries that guarantee a normatively embodied self, and neither vulnerability nor the monstrous is fully containable within a binary structure of the Western logos. Shildrick's reappropriation of vulnerability, as well as Radomska non-living, remind us how relationality shapes that what it is and that what we know. It is about ethics, understood not as good or bad, but as Shildrick reminds us, ethics is not about finding solutions, but about creating openings in and through the uncertainty of strange encounters. So the series Wombs articulate my current mode of becoming a woman in an heterosexual relationship, which was not always the case, not wanting children, which instead was always the case, through a relationship that exceed my human contained self on the individual experience. The piece started by questioning a pharmaceutical object, the pill, to open the research to possible inner and outer encounters with my internal organs, with outer organisms. It opens a desire not to become a mother to its ecological imbrications and acknowledges both. I would like to conclude with an open question. How may we, in times of radical ecological disruption, rethink ethics and relationship and relationalities for a non-living planet? And now a big thank you for everyone for listening, and a big shout out to everyone who contributed to the project and made this possible.
Thank you very much, Margherita. It was indeed an interesting and thought-provoking presentation that your artistic research engages a lot with pharmaceutical industry and biopolitics. And saying that, I want to remind our audience who follows the panel A live on YouTube, please do not hesitate to raise questions on YouTube chat box. My colleague Natasha is collecting them, and then we will address your questions at the end of our panel discussion. And now I would like to welcome the fourth and last speaker. In the first part of our panel, Hasegawa, whose work I want to deliver a Dolphin as part of the CAMILLE Diaries group exhibition at Art Laboratory Berlin. Hasegawa produced many works, putting emphasis on subjects relating to technology and people with employing techniques such as bioart and speculative design. Produces provocative work and insights discussion, continually seeking answers to questions on ethical barriers. Signature projects are related to reproduction, eating, and power. Impossible Baby, Shared Baby, Human Against Shark, I Want to Deliver a Dolphin, and Unbiased Gun are some of the artworks of Hasegawa. I published a speculative design workbook, Revolutionary 20XX, in 2020. She obtained degree of an MA in 2012 from Design Interactions course, Royal College of Art in Britain, worked as a researcher at Design Fiction Group, MIT Media Lab from 2014 to fall of 2016. And she took degree of Master of Science in 2016. Hasegawa is serving as project researcher at the University of Tokyo since April 2017. Please, you may start your presentation. Floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Okay, I'd like to show my video of this project. I want to deliver a Dolphin. This project acknowledges the development of human production and the development and environment. Its potential to be and relate to the brain. For education and childbirth, and discuss some of the technical difficulties. Like the channel, like to drastically have
I need to interrupt you for a second because your sound is not clear because of the video audio. We can't hear you at all. You're speaking.
Okay.
Maybe we just mute. Yeah. Maybe it's better to mute at all so that we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, better. Still not clear, but
Okay, maybe totally. How about this?
yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So this project approaches the problem of human reproduction in an age of overcrowding and overdevelopment and environmental crisis, with potential food shortage and population nearly 7 billion people, I think maybe more. Would a woman consider incubating and giving birth to an endangered species such as a shark or dolphin? This project introduces an argument for giving birth to our food for satisfy our demands for nutrition and childbirth, and discuss some of the technical details of how this might be possible. So I'm gonna change to this slide. So I'm questioning about myself, what I want to deliver, what. So then actually questioning about myself, like I'd like to have a child, and that was such a difficult question. So actually, do we need more humans, or like, you know, such a kind of anti-natalism kind of questions lies up a lot. And then also, on the other hand, maybe I don't want to live alone, but like maybe the pet not gonna be instead of my baby, or I also don't want to waste my femaleness, like, you know, like about 40 years of menstrual pain, such a kind of things. And also, like, you know, being female is quite tough in Japan anyway. So if I don't use the womb, and if I'm not gonna use my kind of potentiality as a female, I think it could be wasted, but I don't want to. I'm not sure about having a human baby. So then actually I just leap to my imagination to, okay, like don't think about technical issue a while. And then what do we really want, or what do I really want? So actually I think I'm quite difficult to be vegetarian, unfortunately. So then but I love marine animals. Actually, I'm a diver. So then actually, okay, why don't I deliver an endangered species that human eats? So example, like I chose a spiny dog fish shark or Maoist dolphin. So actually this is my dilemma chart. So actually if, you know, someone don't really care about the, you know, sea animals, maybe you can go for another kind of endangered species on the land or something like that. So then actually at first, before the dolphin, I started this project. I want to deliver a shark. So then actually about the shark, it's really interesting. So they have kind of 3 types of reproduction. So using kind of placenta, or like laying the eggs, or actually you have hatched egg inside your womb, but actually they are not using placenta, kind of maybe eating each other or other eggs, or like the baby have a kind of sunsack in the tummy. So then I chose the last one, this how to read apacental viviparity. So this is the spiny dogfish. And then so dogfish has such a kind of sac in the tummy. So actually they are eaten by Europeans and also Asians too. And then like in Europe, I guess sometimes eaten by as fish and chips. So then for this shark version, I thought, actually I have done the research about, okay, what is the system about the shark womb, like artificial shark womb? And then so how maybe possibly in the future we can make it in such a small pocket then so also using like a human womb as a kind of aquarium or incubator, and then maybe use your urine to put in your womb, and then also like filtered, and also temperature slightly cool down. And also I wondered like what is like, you know, motherhood, like what is a relationship with the mother and the baby? Is it only just like, you know, incubating in your womb? Maybe it's not. So then like, okay, I found kind of little things about like, okay, so mother feels stress, it's affect to the babies. So, okay, maybe we can make a kind of stress sharing system, and then maybe such a things may be useful for the shark baby in the future while, you know, when it's released in the sea. So maybe they have to know about like, you know, what is the enemy signals. So actually the shark's face has a kind of electrical sensors. So maybe we can put some device inside the womb, and then like, you know, kind of electrical signals that's pretending the enemies. Or so then maybe after delivery, maybe put the GPS, and then like when the baby come nearby, maybe you can try to meet them. So this is kind of, you know, still sci-fi story. And then, but like a shark version is trying to use kind of a current like a medical technique or technologies. And then the dolphin version is more like more sci-fi, and using about synthetic biology. So I chose the Maoist dolphin, and this is most smallest dolphin in the world, and there are only maybe 50 adults. And then they are quite cute, and then they're in danger because it's caught by the fishing net, and then they couldn't breathe. And then, okay, so as a sci-fi, I thought, okay, what shall I do? And then I went to several doctors to talk about that, like example, like IVF technicians or like a placenta researcher. And then actually the guy in the Imperial College doctor said, actually the placenta is really interesting organ. And also that is coming from the baby. So actually if we want to, you know, touch about the DNA editing, it's not coming, well, we don't have to touch with the human DNA. So touching with the animal DNA. So then maybe more higher possibility to do that. And anyway, so, okay, he said, well, placenta is really interesting organ, and which is special about is about immune tolerance. So actually, placenta is, actually you can be the surrogacy mother, you know, like even totally not you, human being inside your tummy, and then still it's okay. Usually like immune system is attacking if, you know, if not you kind of cell into you. But somehow placenta has a kind of wider like immune tolerance. So then if the placenta is only cares about like in a human or not human, maybe in the future, what if we can change it to more like mammal or non-mammal? Of course, it's not such a simple thing, but think as just a sci-fi setting. So then, okay, so maybe in the future, if it's possible, I'd like to make the human placenta by symbiotic technology. And then also, what is the problem could be like, okay, maybe, you know, usually like we pass the immune system to the babies through the placenta too, and also the milk. And then especially like mammals, and they are, yeah, the first milk is really thick and special. So maybe we can synthesize the first milk and then also feeding after the giving birth. So then actually I have to do the research about what is the dolphin placenta. And then it's a beluga, well, placenta looks like this. And then, okay, how I should design it. designing it. So in the end, as a kind of visual impact, more people easier to understand. So I chose a human style placenta. But it's really interesting about like researching other animals' placenta shape. So then, yes, I made this video, and then in the video, there was a scene about feeding the first milk. And then after that, they are swimming together. So then also, of course, like if it happens, there's a doctor who made this technology, and then maybe first female who giving birth to dolphin, and then also the first dolphin baby, which is born from human female. So this is kind of a memorial statue, but it's also smashed by other people. So then I imaged about like nature as paradise, such a kind of people smashing about this memorial statue. So this is the kind of story of this I Want to Deliver a Dolphin project. So then actually, yeah, questioning about imagine a point of view in the future where humans will help this species by the advanced technology by synthetic biology. The human placenta that allows human female to deliver a dolphin is created, and thus human can become a surrogate mother to endangered species. Furthermore, gourmet would be able to enjoy the luxury of eating a rare animal, an animal made by their own body, raising questions of the ownership of rare animal life and life itself. So actually, I think this project is, for me, I tried to put animal and me in the same line. But of course, I didn't ask them to this permission, like, you know, of course, like all the baby were born without the agreement. So like, this is also could be quite violent for them. And then of course, there is a left of ethical questions. Are we allowed to do that? And then this is fair for them. But anyway, just in case if I die earlier than the babies, I would like to be eaten by these babies. And then I hope my corpse is gonna be back to the sea. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ai. And thank you all again, Cecilia, Rodrigo, and Margherita, again for your presentations in the first part of our panel. And I would like to open up our panel A, M/others, wombs and placentas, for a discussion. And our colleague Linus now loving all the videos and then sound so that we can see each other and have a conversation together. And then I would like to also again remind our live stream audience to raise their questions on YouTube live stream chat box, and we will discuss it here as well. And so first of all, I would like to start again with Cecilia and Rodrigo about your collaboration. And maybe can we discuss a little bit the challenges? And then actually, when I was listening to the conversation, I take a note that it was interesting to hear that you are quite skeptical about the questions of Cecilia while you started the collaboration, and how the skepticism and that imagination transform into a very abstract and beautiful work. So I would like to a little bit express my surprise, and then also something that is marvelous, that between this collaboration between a scientist and an artist, how skepticism transforms into an interesting work.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so from a scientific perspective, I thought it would be virtually impossible to transform molecular iron into metal iron, because it's a very the reaction has to happen at very, very high temperatures. And so I questioned this to Cecilia, but Cecilia had already made that transformation before, when she did the iron ring project, in which plants that accumulate iron were harvested and transformed into a metal ring. So I was also fascinated by the way she thinks as a scientist and informs herself in scientific methods to be able to translate her idea into something tangible. And it came through discussion that, yeah, that my skepticism transformed into, yeah, that I trust it would be possible to make.
And Cecilia, your connection with the iron is not started with this project, right? So you have been already interested in the extraction of iron from soil and plants and in different organisms and living, non-living beings.
Yeah, I think, yeah, for Astrida, she talks about water. Maybe iron is my, I'm very fascinated about it, but also how iron, in a way, we are just minerals that take new form. And but I'm also very interested in kind of the ideas about iron, for example, when we look at a needle, or we take it so for granted, but it's really interesting to think about maybe the pre-life of that iron and where it come from. And yeah, so, but also, yeah, how it circulates in a way, yeah. But it's also kind of a crafts maybe that's disappearing, also the knowledge of how we used to work iron. And I also gotten some questions before, why did I repeat myself of the iron reduction firing? Can't you have extracted the iron chemically, or couldn't it have been some other way to do it? And it probably could, but it's also very straightforward, back to the basic. Yeah.
And before maybe we continue talking about another project, Margherita, if you also want to raise questions, please interrupt me, and then just, it's more like a kind of another, yeah.
Yeah, it's, I'll take your invitation to interrupt you.
Yes, please.
Because I like Cecilia's work very much, and I like this transformation that reconnects. There is a journey across geological times that happens inside our bodies, and this reconnects to the concept of bodies of water that Astrida makes, but also it reminded me this material engagement and transformation that you do from blood, and this temporary provisional organ that is the only temporary organ actually mammals or humans have. Please correct me if there are others. You turn it into an archaic technological device, and there is something that reminds me of Erich Berger's piece and Erich Berger and Margherita's piece Inheritance that was exhibited at our laboratory exactly 1 year ago, that has to do with radioactivity and time and how that passes over to generation, and it's transformed to an archaic technological device. But this gives a sense of temporality that again exceeds our human experience. And this is why I like the project so much. So it's more a comment than a question, but maybe it opens to other questions for other.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, the project is really it happened in the communication with Rodrigo, and also what you said, Tuçe, about the difficulties. It was because also a project is within a short time period, so it was also going to collect placentas, taking a train 4 hours, and then meeting the mothers, and then going back, and it was really fantastic that we got this collaboration also with the hospital, and also this the idea of also believe in art as an option for the donation. But so it was a lot of difficulties to not difficulties to reach out, but within the time frame it was very tempting, because we also thought in the beginning that we needed to go through this medical, what's it called, Rodrigo?
Midwives. So in Holland, it's very common that women deliver at home, and they have these specialized nurses, the midwives, that accompany the pregnancy from the beginning until the delivery. And so we had spoken during our preparation of the proposal with several midwives to guarantee the feasibility of the project in terms of materials, if you could get enough placentas to concretize the project. And this network is very dense and established in the Netherlands. And that was with their help that we could guarantee, let's say, that it would be feasible to collect enough material. But it was also, so it was, because it's in such a short time, we have 6 months to do the project. And I think we spent maybe 3 months reaching out, trying to contact the midwives, but also mothers, people that we knew. And it was when we got in contact with Erel from one of the hospitals in Amsterdam, where most of the deliveries are done when it's in the hospital. And she was so touched by the project. And in fact, there is also a small piece where she talks about her experience in the project in the movie, that documentary that we assembled afterwards, that it's so beautiful to see how she engaged in the project that gave an extension to her purpose as a gynecologist, and fostering or also helping the delivery of life. But it was, at some point we had so many placentas by every day that Cecilia was just running back and forth from the hospital to the lab, and we were able to do that. Another maybe important, Cecilia mentioned in her presentation, it was the ethical consent that we had to get from the mothers. And also raised questions about, okay, the mother has has a word to say about her placenta, but what about the baby that at the moment is not capable to decide on that? And it's also a very important player in this project. So we also had discussions about that, and we also had to learn about the different ethical aspects when a material is used for a certain purpose, for research or for art, or for, we found also several caveats in the law that do not, how do you say, they don't see these kind of situations, because it's again the questions that art asks that are sometimes not seen or anticipated by science. And so this, I think, it's a very important mechanism to evolve the way we see things, the way we make laws or live in society in a more broad picture.
I quickly jump to questions that we received from YouTube live channel, and both questions are actually towards I's video work. And then the first question is Karolina Zimniewicz. And she says, it is an intriguing question if the delivered dolphin would be seen as a human or a non-human being.
Interesting. I think maybe in Japanese law, okay. Maybe I didn't really think about that point, because anyway, in Japan, if it's considered as a human being, have to have a kind of some paper, and then
Like a
have
certificate?
certificate, and then also have to have the address. And then like, so if I'm gonna, release it to the sea, like where's the address too? And then actually, yeah, to be honest, like I don't really care about if it's human or non-human. I know like India is considered as like a dolphin is like a non-human human. Of course, like in Japan, like some parts of Japanese people eating. So that is why I chose dolphin also for the Japanese people's point of view. Also like eating or be eaten kind of relationship. So it's a good question. I never really thought about that. Thank you.
And then I will just quickly jump to the second question in relation to that answer from Mariana Romagnani. And she says, it also brings another layer of discussion to the issue related to reproductive work. Have you thought about this, I? So this is also like a question, but maybe not only to you, but also all the participant artists in relation to thinking about the reproduction and then the different layers of reproduction, which also can be a question for Margherita, because she's also questioning the notion of reproduction and then the cultural value of producing an offspring, and then the importance of giving another human being to birth. But then this is also a choice of caring for a non-human being. So Margherita, when you were talking about your personal story of birth control pills, and then how you can just access, and then how it is not accessible worldwide, and then how those politics over female body is predominant. So maybe we can a little bit extend on that, how we make those kind of decisions throughout our lives, and then how this pharmaceutical industry, maybe Rodrigo can also join in that conversation, since you're also coming from a kind of a background.
I think there are many questions here, so maybe sure. I have something to say with regard to the first one, and then I can take on the second one.
Okay.
If
yeah, I'm also thinking about questions. Yeah, lots of questions. Can you say the question simply again? Sorry.
The YouTube question to you, I was saying that your work brings up another layer of discussion to the issue related to reproductive work. And so Mariana asks, what do you think about this?
So I wondered, is it about like anti-natalism stuff or what? Or just like why I fascinated within the reproduction?
Well, maybe Natasha can add further comments, and then maybe we can just address the question again. This is the only question that I see. I cannot say, it's not my question, sorry. But maybe we can discuss the idea of reproduction and then its pharmaceutical relationship.
Yeah. So anyway, like I think like, I believing about I'm female, and then like living in Japan as a female. And then like what is made me as a female? So what is a female is for me is about the power of the reproduction. And I'd like to talk about that point. And then also, like, we were talking about mother things before these sessions. And then like, it sounds like a little bit burden about like, about responsibility to the next generation. And then as a kind of in ethical thinking, like, it's quite tough. I think like antinatalism is kind of telling about the point. Like we are not asked them before, for the baby, like, would you like to be this world? Or would you like to have a, life in this world? So then also, yeah, too much. And then also like be as a mother, you have to care about other species or no, other lives too. And then like, have to be a nice mother. That kind of image is too much also. So then actually like, seeing other animals, like, just, giving birth and then don't really care about that. Some of them does care, but some of them doesn't. And then like, human being is like, especially like, femininity is like, you have to care a lot. And then that is also, yes, it's a femininity. And then like, I would like to also be slightly more freedom from that also. Like, I'd like to be just an animal as like, just, using my, organ and then giving birth, and then also don't really have to care about others too, or something like that. Like, it's just a gradation, like, I'd like to have a gradation, like, you have to, now as a human mother, you have to care a lot, such a like responsibility. And then, but like seeing other animals, such a kind of a gradation about the cares. And then I'd like to choose one of that as my kind of freedom. That would be kind of nice kind of world for me. Like, it's kind of fantasy also.
I think that was how nature allowed us to evolve and to have different cares also because of different needs. Normally in biology, shape follows function. And so this, I think, can be also be used to kind of explain what you say, that some animals don't care after giving birth, others care. And there is this whole spectrum of possibilities in between. And this is all coming from how biology works. And yeah, I think.
Yeah, so then actually Camille's diaries, or no, Camille's story from the Holloway stuff is you can choose any species. So that means like you can choose your kind of, natality or, kind of motherhood style too. So that is really interesting point of view. And then also they are trying to reducing the kind of population in somehow too. And then I think Holloway maybe mentioned about like, feminists didn't talk about like antinatalism. And then, yeah, so I think that is a good point. So then like as a female, like talking about like antinatalism is a little difficult. Yeah, sometimes like, people hate me. But of course, I'm not really antinatalism, just like think about this point.
I think you are also provoking people, just like Astrid did in the first session. And this is really important to create this kind of open discussions with provocation. Yeah, it could be sometimes very complicated, but it's a starting point. And I just want to thank Natasha because she followed up Mariana's question, and then she commented that it's about biopolitics and the role of female bodies in the society, which I think it's also not a question towards only I, but also to Margherita's work, which deals a lot with biopolitics and the role of the female body in the society.
Yeah, I saw Mariana's comments, and thanks a lot for reposting it in our internal chat. Yes, very much it is about biopolitics, and all the exchange we had during this discussion we are having in this discussion brings me back to certain points that Astrid Neymanis raised this morning in her talk. And first of all, how especially she's taking it from the perspective of feminist studies and feminist science and technology studies, and actually the topic of motherhood has not been resolved, can't be resolved, and this impossibility of resolving it should be our starting point to open up to different readings, possible readings. And this comment by Astrida reminded me of this important value of feminists, and that is accepting, acknowledging, embracing, and celebrating diversity. So in the diversity, we can have antinatalist position, we can have also human-to-human motherhoods, and they are both important, and they are both to be defended, I think. But it is then about biopolitics in society, because there is a lot of expectations that are loading roles in society. If you are a woman, that you are supposed to become a mother. This was my experience. And probably if you're a man, you are supposed to become something else. And maybe others can say about this. I think we are both in this play of expectation. And the choice not to is a choice, and therefore one should take responsibility for it. There are myriads of choice, but also contradictions within this choice. As I said this morning, I'm a very proud auntie. I'm a very proud mother on non-humans, and maybe in some years I may have a different position on this choice. Who knows? We are all in becoming, we are all evolving. And of course, this is an ongoing process that accompanies every day. And if we can also think of this decision with relation to our individual expectation in life, or we can link it to more wider global processes. However, we should not remember that we are, I speak out of my experience, but maybe many of the panelists today are people from the global north. And this is biopolitics. We are people from the north. We live extracting resources. And I thank Cecilia for reminding us of iron. We are extracting resources in a way, in an exaggerated way in respect to others. And so our decisions are also situated within this complexity, within this ecological complexity. Also, the fact of making art, the fact of attending to a video conference speaks of a biopolitical privilege we all embody. We should always remember that, because otherwise we talk about human nature, continuous conundrum, and so on, and we forget about this privilege and about this burden. And this being interconnected also through biopolitics should also remind us that there is no division between what is called nature. I'm now in conversation with my best friend ever. She's pregnant. And so we have a lot of conversations on these topics. And she once mentioned the natural way of giving birth, which is not supporting, but I started questioning her with what is nature. In the moment you have ecography, in the moment you have medical care supporting your motherhood and pregnancy, in the moment you can have therapy supporting your pregnancy, this is not what we call nature. Or better, this is nature, because nature is this overlapping of being human, technologically mediated, living here, living through a medical apparatus that is embodying biopolitical relationships. And I think we are moving all in these overlaps.
So in a way, nature culture is in flux.
Yeah, definitely.
Because of the technological advancement.
there is little, I mean, that I think that this is not my innovative contribution, but what we call nature understood in that way is outdated.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, especially now. These are the times of synthetic biology and a lot of advances, both for medical care, but also in other fields, in communication, everything. We are now becoming more and more transformed to be adapted to the new times. And this, I think, has, of course, implications in every field. And maybe goes a little bit in line with the question that was asked to if this dolphin would be a human or a dolphin, and in the need to define this identity of this or this entity, I think can be a very interesting discussion to not only just for the definition itself, but also to put humans, animals, and all beings in the planet more equally, and that it's kind of a bridge for this dialogue, and to call maybe more responsibilities of the transformations that are happening now in the ecosystems because of all the extraction or exaggerated extractions that is happening, so that humans can live better or in better, just as we think it is. And yeah, that's one of the things that I really love about these partnerships, because it just opens up many discussion routes that can lead to all the aspects that are impacting society nowadays, but always looking to the future with these impossible questions that I usually call.
But this is also within the scope of ethics, no? And I'm just also kind of going back to the question of Margherita and also I's conversation and your ethical forms that you were collecting, and how those kind of advancements can be still function within the understanding of our ethics.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. There is also, you might have heard about this CRISPR technology that now everybody's using, and also this a scientist that claims that generated 2 twins because of this DNA editing technology, and the discussion that was generated around that. It's also something that needs to happen, because this is tools that are going to be used, and we still don't know what is right, what is wrong, in which context, how can we advance but cautious, so that we don't give steps bigger than our legs, because this can have very important consequences.
Yeah, I can see Margherita wanna just...
Yeah, I found it incredible in the in this history of the CRISPR babies, poor babies with this name. Where's the mother? I mean, why no one ever mentions why she accepted it? I mean, there are myriad of reasons why a person might be interested in this. It can be interest in science, money, self-experimentation, wanting to contribute to society. There are so many, but she's always out of the picture. And again, there is a male scientist operating on human and female bodies. Why is she out of the picture? She's so rarely mentioned. Probably she chose to, which is fair enough. But then why isn't it ever mentioned? The mother decided to contribute in anonymity, for example, to protect her for possible, you know, frictions. So it would be great to hear more from her.
It was just an example. I didn't want to deviate.
No, it's great. It's great. It's a great example.
In that sense that I mentioned it. But also I had, and when we were initially introducing the question, and Tuçe talked about pharma, and that about the, I don't know, the pharma's perspective of contraception, or something that connected the contraception with pharma. Not that I work for pharma or I have any connection there, but one thing that I find interesting, it's also not my field, but you hear much more talking about female contraception than male contraception. And this is also something very intriguing also from biological perspective, because a woman can only get pregnant every 9 months or 10 months, but a man can generate pregnancies much more frequent. And so it would, from a conceptual point of view, it would make much more sense, I think, to work more on male contraceptions than on female contraceptions. And I don't know if this was something that Margherita considered in her research and in her...
Yes, I did, and thanks for bringing that up. Actually, the fact that there is female hormonal contraception, because we are talking about hormonal contraception. I mean, a person with a penis can wear a condom, and this again. But on the one hand, it's important a woman can take responsibility and own what is happening with her body. So the fact that hormonal contraception is available, it's very big, because it can be taken without, for example, insisting every time on wearing a condom. This is one aspect of importance. But on the other hand, it also leads to the fact that intervening on the testosterone would somehow decrease the manhood, or what the female contraception was tested on female bodies, and it's very rare that experimentation happens on male bodies. Or why aren't men taking responsibility of contraception, and so on. There is a series of questions that again underpin how science and society are shaped, so how our nature is shaped, that has to do with biopolitics. There has been recently a research on hormonal contraception for male, but it's very scared. I mean, it's very scared. And again, if you ask to most women and male who pays for the pill, the answer is generally, even in stable relationship, that the woman pays for it. I mean, it doesn't come from the men. Not always, of course, there are exceptions, they are wonderful, and maybe things are changing, but again, it usually comes, the responsibility is given to the woman, but it also weighs on the woman. All my friends usually pay for the pill themselves, even though it helps both partners.
We can actually talk about this another hour, but we're running out of time. Actually, we ran out of time. But before I close, I also want to mention that the closing session, that even Kirksey is going to talk about the issues that you raised here. And he quickly mentioned that actually the father and mother in China, why they decided this CRISPR technology, is that the father was HIV positive. And for that reason, that was the only way that they can proceed with the reproduction of their family. Anyway, the more details will come later in the next symposium and the next sessions. But now it's time for us to say goodbye. Thank you very much, Cecilia Johnson, Dr. Rodrigo, Leite de Oliveira, Margherita Pevere, and I, Hasegawa, for joining this session. Thank you, Linus, for technical support, and Natasha for helping us with collecting the questions. And lastly, I would like to thank you, co-curators of the CAMILLE Diaries exhibition, Regine Rapp and Christian de Lutz. We're closing panel A, M/others, wombs and placentas. The upcoming panel B, fluid inheritance, which will be moderated by Christian de Lutz, start at 14:15 Berlin time. Thank you so much.